Hello, welcome back to another video where we go down an enormous rabbit hole. Well, this time it's not so enormous, and come up entirely empty-handed, with no answers to give on any of it. This one requires a little bit of backstory, just like the last one did, so I will take you through what I was doing several hours ago. I realized at some point that despite at least some level of documentation of this, I could not for the life of me piece together which artists on the first Drawn to Life games did which assets I had seen. And to be honest, after looking into it further, it's still a bit unclear, but I do have answers now. And I also have a whole lot of questions about an entirely unrelated thing. So one of the artists on the first two games, well, he did some work on Two Realms as well, but his name is Edison Yan, or Yan, but I believe it's Yan. He's an extremely successful artist, primarily an illustrator, but he does other work. And when looking for some of his other work in order to get a mental idea of what kind of things he normally did, I came across his website, and next to the section with his password-protected portfolio, which is not something I've ever seen before, he has a list of, I assume, recent projects that he worked on. One of which appears to be a children's book. This book is called Renee Rose and the Cherry Blossom Balloon Brigade. It claims to be written by one Lynn Humphrey, and the illustrations, of course, are by Edison Yan. On this website page appears to be quite literally the entire book, and I found these illustrations very charming, and very endearing, and in a way very beautiful. But as I was scrolling through them, I realized something very odd about this children's book, and that is that the writing of this book, although it is short, is very wordy, very dense, almost so clustered with words that are so, I guess, scattershot is a good descriptor for how this is written, that it makes some pages legitimately impossible to understand. And I didn't understand why something that seemed to be for children would be written this way. So I'm going to read you a page. Thistles sang hymns, hazel and maple fly, abracadabra blasts horsey, and multicolored conkers rain from the sky. Delphinium trapeze, apple trees shine, lilies rage, primroses prayed, Lady Mantle ran away, everyone cheered and waved goodbye. And that's just awfully wordy for a child. Here's another. Sunflowers dance and orchids unicycle, while mistletoes romance and daffodils juggle. Button palms acrobat and dahlia won't smile. Stubborn hawthorns prance fearless towards the forbidden cathedral. That's just a lot. And it's difficult even as an adult reader who knows what all of those words mean to decipher what story is being told. So obviously this confused me because I thought, okay, is this not a children's book? And then I thought to myself, there's two possibilities here. The first possibility, which I supposed was a bit of an Occam's razor one, is that maybe this just is not for children. Maybe this is designed to look like it is for children for the charm of it, but it is not intended to be read or enjoyed by a small child. And I figured that was the primary possibility. I also thought that the secondary possibility was a far more convoluted one, but generally children's books are written with the intent to impart something onto the child that they can use as some sort of leverage in their life later on. Normally it's something emotional or social because it's easier for most lay people to teach children social and emotional concepts than factual ones, because most children's book writers, surprisingly, just don't have a lot of hands-on children's education experience. A lot of them are simply just interested in writing for children. A far less likely and more convoluted possibility is that this book is written for children, and it's written in a way such that children who are reading it would have to inquire about the vocabulary in the book in order to obtain it. I figured maybe I was just not on to the mad genius of this book, so I went and I looked it up. I looked up the name of the book. To my surprise, I could not find quite literally anything about the book, nor could I find anything about its author, Lynn Humphrey, nor could I find anything about the odd name mini-mojis that appears on this front cover. So instead, what I chose to do was simply take the image of the front cover and reverse image search it and see if it shows up anywhere else. And to my surprise, no, it did not. But a cover by a different artist, a different illustrator for the same book, did show up. This cover was by an illustrator named Bhagya Ratnavira, I believe is how you would pronounce her name. Her cover appears to be illustrated using the same sort of, I suppose, creative prompt as Edison's. It's a young girl in a pink dress holding a very large leaf umbrella with the name Renee Rose written in pink on top, as they prance through a grassy hillside with flowers on it. These are things both of the covers have. Now, Bhagya points out a handle for this Lynn Humphrey that just says Tipsy ID. Now, this does not go to anything on Facebook nor to Instagram where it was reposted, but looking it up online does net a now defunct website that, when you go back to the web archive, is in some cases partially archived. So this is Tipsy ID. Now on the side here you can see what appears to be a singular Spotify audiobook reading of the book. But what's interesting about the website aside from that, and it's hard for me to see very much because none of the images are archived. What's interesting, some of the images are archived on this version of the page. What's interesting about this website is what happens when you scroll through any of it, because this appears to be entirely stock filler designed as a template for somebody's storefront. And all of the blog posts on the front page read like, for instance, the one on the 24th of April 2023 that just says, Wes Anderson, Banjo, you probably haven't heard of them, Cred, XOXO, Deep V, Kale, Chips, Kickstarter, Viral, Swag, Meggings, Jean Shorts, Chillwave, Satan Disrupt, Meditation, Flexitarian, Authentic Organic, you probably haven't heard of them, Taxidermy, FAP, Pop-Up, Trust Fund, Tumblr. Fucking, this is ridiculous, right? Next level ethical aesthetic. When you go to the shop page on this website, there is a single thing, and it is just a $60 hand-knitted Halloween jumper for ages 4 to 5. I think it's a template storefront page, but that's awfully odd, isn't it? Then I went a bit further back. The further back in the archives you go, and for a period of time a little bit ahead in the archives that you go, you will find what appears to be human writing, possibly by this Lynn Humphrey character, whose full name is Lynette Humphrey, older pages appear to be related to family blogging in the UK and whatnot, but none of the links on the website really go anywhere, so it's strange. And I believe that this is also a template. So then I found myself very curious as to who this Lynette Humphrey is exactly, and why, if she wrote this children's book, she would commission two separate artists to do what appeared to be the exact same full book. So I went looking and I could not find any information on an author, much less a children's book author named Lynette Humphrey. I did find some Lynette Humphreys ever in history. I found a woman who won poker lotto. I found an abstract artist on Flickr. I found an older country vocalist, but none of these appear to be related. Those are just women with a name. I also found a lot of obituaries, I assume because Lynette is a bit of an older name, it's out of fashion. One of my grandmothers is quite literally named Lynette. And then, once I ran out of leads on that front, I went back to this illustrator, Bahagya, and I became curious about her other work. And as I was going through her back catalog, I found that almost all of the books that she's illustrated for are on Amazon.com, except for the one by Lynette Humphrey, which does not appear to exist anywhere online. But all of the information about the authors, if it exists at all, only exists on Amazon.com, which I found strange because they had no other posted information anywhere else. And a lot of the time when she would @ an author, it would link to a empty or privated page of somebody that didn't really seem related. But there were a couple of books that I saw that appeared to be deliberate in their writing. For instance, one of the books is about a young girl with vitiligo, and one of the books appears to be written by a child. So, out of curiosity, I looked into the publishers of these books because I wanted to know, okay, does Bahagya maybe work for a company that does book covers as one of their services? Because there are a number of self-publishing services that will do book covers for you, essentially, as part of their packaging. And it didn't seem like any of them had a cohesive single one publisher, but many of them were self-published. I then did discover that she has a Fiverr page, and that may be where she's getting most of her commission from. But that doesn't explain the involvement of critically acclaimed, highly successful, well-known illustrator Edison Yan. Because, not to understate Bahagya's work, but she has a niche that it makes sense that she would be hired for children's books because she's a children's book illustrator. That's her primary stated profession. But why would somebody who I cannot find any information on go to specifically Edison Yan for a children's book illustration? Was he on some sort of service like Fiverr or something looking for commission? And the answer is no, not that I could find. And so I wondered, okay, do Bahagya and Edison share some kind of work experience over their history in the past few years when this book was published? So I made a LinkedIn. I lied to LinkedIn in order to get access to it and looked at Edison's page. I found one for Bahagya, but it's not filled. So I just looked at Edison's page, and I could not find anything that particularly pointed towards children's book illustration. Obviously, he's done work for children's games and for children's movies and for children's shows, so it's not that far out of the ballpark, but it did still personally pique my interest that there didn't seem to be a common thread of employment between these two people, which meant that they were both doing it off of freelance work, essentially. And then I had to wonder, okay, are both of them taking freelance jobs from the same place? Like, is this perhaps a book content mill of some kind? Because those do exist. One of the most infamous ones is the Urban Writers, but while I was looking for this, I found one called Jacob Marley, which offers a very similar service. They essentially write the book for you and then make the cover, and then they create an audiobook for you, and then they market it out for you, and you do essentially no work in the process. It is quite literally for people who do not give a fuck about writing and just want a book. Not to read, to be clear, because these books are not well written, just to have a book to their name of some kind. So I went back and looked to see if I could find any information on a possible publisher for this Renee Rose book. And the answer is no, but I did find this odd name in the front cover. Mini-mojis or Mini-moji. It's hard to tell which one it's supposed to be, if there's supposed to be an apostrophe there or not. And so I looked it up, and I looked it up in relation to books, and all I could find in relation to books was this diva discussing like book readathon, essentially, that happened to have the same name, I assume coincidentally. So that did not help. It also appeared, the more that I looked into it, like the illustrators at the very least were under the impression that this Renee Rose book was a part of a series, but I cannot find any information on a series. And so I eventually spun out of any leads that I could sniff down, and I am now left with only a burning curiosity that I have no way of solving, because the only way to solve it, possibly, not even assuredly, would be to contact one of the two illustrators involved and badger them about a project they probably don't have very much knowledge on. And all I would really get as an answer to that is if they were taking freelance work at the time. So I have two theories. The first theory is that this is a done-for-you book that has those freelance jobs available, and that both of these illustrators just happened to take on that freelance job. My alternative, and I believe more compelling theory, is that this is a real person who was attempting to break into authoring children's media and started up a website and never updated it, and none of her writing prospects got off of the ground, and she was not able to settle particularly hard on an illustrator, and it never ended up being published. Both of these would explain to me the reason that the book is not available anywhere and does not have any records of ever being available anywhere, because if it's the first option, obviously eventually it would be taken down, and if it's the second option, then it was never up to begin with. But that's strange. It's just odd to me. I don't understand. I don't understand it. It's an odd book. When you read it, it's an odd book. And then there just being this air of mystique about it really intrigued me, and I still have no answers. And so I hope you enjoyed me having no answers.
You're never gonna be popular. 'Cause you're a lesbian.